A UN conference in support of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has ended in New York, with France and Belgium joining several other countries, including Australia, in recognising a Palestinian state. For more, I'm joined by former Middle East correspondent Nicole Johnston. Great to see you again, Nicole. So what's the most significant development at the UN General Assembly today?
Well, Ros, clearly it is the fact that France has recognised a Palestinian state. Australia and Canada, they got the jump early. They did it yesterday. We've been waiting for France to do it. They have chosen today. Why is France so significant? Well, it is a pivotal player in the Middle East. We know that. It has a long historic association from the time of the division of the entire region from the Ottoman Empire. But also, France is one of the 4 out of 5 countries in the UN Security Council that has now recognised a Palestinian state. So in the last couple of days, France and the UK. And that is why it is so important. Which country is on the outer when it comes to the UN Security Council? Of course, it is the United States. So a lot of focus is on France. As we heard, there's also Belgium, Luxembourg, Malta. They've also recognised it. France is the big one. Let's take a listen to what the French President Emmanuel Macron had to say about it.
The time has come. This is why, faithful to my country's historic commitment in the Middle East to peace between the Israeli and Palestinian peoples, I declare that France today recognises the state of Palestine. This recognition of the state of Palestine is a defeat for Hamas and for all those who stir up anti-Semitic hatred, nourish anti-Zionist obsessions, and seek the destruction of the state of Israel.
So what does recognition mean for Palestinians standing in the UN, Nicole?
So for all of the attention that this is getting right now, it really doesn't change anything inside the UN. So the Palestinian delegation already had non-member observer status in the UN, and it had had this since 2012. Now, to get full permanent voting rights and membership, that would need to be approved by the UN Security Council. As we discussed, that is not going to happen because of the veto of the United States. So for the Palestinian delegation, they will remain observers. And that is why this is essentially a symbolic move. It is support for the Palestinian cause, it is support for their statehood, but it doesn't change their rights in the UN at all.
So it's been called symbolic, but what would it actually take to build a Palestinian state?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it depends on who you talk to. A lot of people will say, well, it's so hard, it's so complicated, there's settlements, there's, decades of enmity. But actually, the formula for this was agreed and formalised back in the 1990s with the Oslo Accords. And when you look at it then, it is quite simple. Both sides agreed to it, but the final difficult issues were always kicked down the can was kicked down the road, and that's why the Oslo Accords essentially fell apart. But what was meant to happen? It was meant to be a Palestinian state, and this is still the formula, a Palestinian state based on the borders of 1967. So a state in Gaza and the West Bank. And then mutually agreed land swaps from both sides. So Israel would have kept those large Israeli settlements in the West Bank and pulled out of smaller settlements. There would have also been a symbolic right of return for refugees, Palestinian refugees from the 1948 war, and then the last element of it was always a Palestinian state based in East Jerusalem. That is still the formula. No new formula has come up, but as we know, decades of failure of the Oslo peace process, increasing support for Hamas because of frustration with the Palestinian Authority, with the Israelis, and the inability to come up with some sort of peace deal, and that's why we have ended up with what we have today.
So you've covered a UN General Assembly before. What's it like there? What other news should we be watching out for this week?
They are quite an extraordinary event to cover, and here on the ABC, I'm sure we'll be doing it day in, day out, all week. And it is one of those rare events where you're in New York and there are leaders and foreign ministers from all over the world. So you can be at the UN walking through corridors, and it is sort of surprising and shocking who you'll see. But it's also quite accessible. It is one of those rare times of years where they want to talk to the media. You can sit down and interview the foreign minister for Saudi Arabia, for example. So it is a rare opportunity to get people to have some very interesting interviews, and it is a fascinating time in New York. New Yorkers hate it. The city grinds to a halt. The traffic is terrible. You can't get a booking in the city at any kind of restaurant, but it is a fascinating event. What is the other big issue that hasn't received as much attention so far, because we've been focused on this recognition of Palestine? It is the Russian incursions into NATO airspace. And we have also had an emergency summit that was called by Estonia to discuss that. As we know, it's been really ramping up over the last week. 3 Russian jets on Saturday, Australian time, over the Gulf of Finland, Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. That is no mistake. President Putin is clearly testing the resolve of NATO. He's pushing its buttons on that eastern flank, and I think he will keep pressing. This won't be the end of it. First it was the drones in Poland, now fighter jets in Estonia, and NATO is really scrambling to try and figure out how to respond, to how to show enough resolve to get the Russians to stop, but I don't think they will.